Hello again, everyone, and welcome to this episode of One-on-One. I'm Martin Foss. Today we have a very special guest. She has risen in politics, but she's been around the community for quite some time. Miss Beryl Amedee is going to be my guest today on One-on-One. Stick around. One-on-One is brought to you by the Law Office of Waits and Downer. And welcome back to this episode of One-on-One. And I don't know why I haven't had her earlier on the program. I was telling her that she's done so much for the community. Beryl, good to see you. How are you?
Oh, I'm glad to be here, and maybe not being able to come earlier had a lot to do with excessive special sessions over the years, huh?
Oh, absolutely. You're right. Y'all have had a few.
Just a few. I've lost count, really.
Isn't that part of your life now, special sessions?
Yes, the part-time job with one session a year, I think we've been averaging 2 per year, so we usually end up with 3 or more.
But you're used to that now, right?
Yes, it's been the routine since I came in.
But for the audience, and for myself too, because we always see you on the peripheral. We don't get to dive into where you were born and where you're from and all this. And we call y'all the power couple, you and John. Y'all both in politics, both have very key roles in what you all do. But where were you born? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, way back from the beginning.
From the beginning.
I was actually born in North Carolina. My dad was from Thibodeau, and my mom was from North Carolina, and they met because he was in the Navy. He was stationed briefly, I suppose, at Norfolk, and that's where they met. And so when they married, they lived in North Carolina a while, then they'd moved to Thibodeau, then they'd moved back. And eventually, just a few months after I was born, they moved back to Louisiana and never left again. I guess they finally put down roots, or maybe it's just too difficult to move with multiple children. Yeah. I never asked, but I was raised in the Thibodeau, Schriever area all my growing up years, and I'm not far from there now.
What was your maiden name?
Adams.
Adams, okay.
Yeah. It's the
For some reason I
Adamses
knew that, but when you marry so long and you have a new name, sometimes you have to recall what it used to be, you know?
Yes, yes. I was going to say it's the Adamses from Bruley-Guiot.
Okay.
So there are lots of Adams families around, but this particular group, my dad was born in Raceland, raised in Thibodeau, and so my grandparents were on Bruley-Guiot Road, and that's where I spent a whole lot of my weekends growing up.
Well, he had to have a little country in him, at least he had to adopt a little bit coming from somewhere when you in those areas. There's a lot of country.
Yep. A lot of marsh.
Yeah.
Yes, it's all very rural.
Yeah. Tell me about your early years. I mean, what was your growing up like?
Well, I had a dad who worked in the oil field and a mom who was a stay-at-home mom, which was really in style at that time, I suppose, for married couples. Yeah. And I appreciate that. I only remember my mom working outside of the house for a very brief period when I was around 5 years old. I hated it because I liked my mom being home every night. My dad would come in at 5:30 and she would leave for work around 6 or 7, and then she'd be gone past my bedtime. And I was so glad whenever she didn't continue with that job. It just, it meant a lot to me to have both my parents at home at night, in the evening, and as we got into school with homework and all that, that stability was really a blessing. And so I grew up right there on Schriever Highway, and I guess I might be showing my age if I tell you I watched the Schriever overpass being built from my front yard.
Really?
And I remember all the equipment and the sounds of the pile drivers and everything. That was part of some of my earliest time, I suppose, as a child. And I remember it looked so big when we got to ride over it for the first time. Yeah. I can remember looking out the window and we were above the trees, and that was amazing to me. We grew up right there on the highway. I had an older sister and a younger sister, and we spent Sundays at my grandparents' house in the Bruley, because we'd go to church first thing in the morning, and then we'd head over there for lunch and play with the cousins all afternoon. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I thought that was what everybody did. And looking back as an adult, I consider that a tremendous blessing to have had the opportunity to spend time with family virtually every week and really hang out. We'd eat lunch and we'd usually stay all afternoon and sometimes eat supper before we'd go home. You didn't really have indoor air conditioning, so we'd sit on the porch till the mosquitoes came out and then go inside with all the window screens protecting us from the mosquitoes.
You bring back so many memories, because you're right, that was a privilege, because right down the road in Thibodeau, we did the same thing. Everybody would, Mama was one of 11, Daddy was one of 10, so it was like, it was a reunion, you know, every Sunday. After church we'd go, and, you know, I'm not saying those times are completely lost, but for the most part they are.
Having dinner together as often as we can as a family is something I believe that we should all aim for, especially when you have children growing up in the family, you know, at that time. Because I think that's a lot of what's missing today, that accountability. When you know on Sunday afternoon you're going to be at the house with your grandparents and all your aunts and uncles and cousins, and you're going to have to deal with whatever went on that week. And they might be celebrating because you made the honor roll, or they might be fussing because you got punished for something at school.
Yeah, they might ask you a tough question.
Yes, yes. That sort of reinforcement, that family, the extended family, I think would do us, the whole, all of society, some good right now if we could get back to that.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
Were you mischievous at all growing up?
My parents are no longer here to ask, but no, I think both my sisters and I, we really didn't get into much trouble or cause much trouble. The one time I was ever sent to the office in 12 years of school, in 6th grade at Caldwell Middle School. What was my crime? I had circulated a petition for better cafeteria food. And
Come on.
the principal called me in and fussed, and he said, "Your petition is illegal." And I said, "Well, why?" And he said, "Because you put the paragraph of what the petition is for on the first page, but for a petition to be legal, you have to put that on every page. So all these other pages of signatures, you could get in trouble for this. So you need to stop this right now and don't pass any more petitions." And I was scared to death. I thought, you know, he was going to call the police. I was going to go to jail or something for not having a proper petition. That was the only time I ever got sent to the principal's office. But at the same time, my mom must have earned some special crowns in heaven, because I wouldn't say we were mischievous, it's that we did some things that caused like trips to the emergency room. A lot of people would expect that of boys, you know, rough and tumble, bicycle accidents or whatever. Not girls, but we did things.
Were y'all tomboys?
Oh yeah. That's one of the things I got fussed for all the time, climbing trees. I would climb up in the tree, and when my mom would call me to come in the house, I would never come down while she was at the back door where she could see where I was coming from. I would wait until she went back in the house, then I'd climb down really quickly.
And you've been climbing ever since, huh?
Yes, I have.
In the political world and everything else.
Oh, I thought you were referring to other stunts, like the publicity stunt that Louisiana Family Forum had put on several years back, where 3 years in a row they had people rappel down the side of the second tallest building in Baton Rouge. And I got to do that 2 of the 3 years, and it was so fun. I told people if they'd let me do this every week, I'd pay a fee, like at a fair, where you pay a ticket to ride on the fair rides. I would do that.
So you're adventurous.
Yes, calculated risk.
So you're obviously not scared of heights.
No,
Or
not
did
scared
you
of heights.
just not look down?
Oh, I looked down. It was beautiful. It was
Really?
fun. Yes, I think we were, 27 stories up, I believe. It's so quiet up there. You just hear birds and distant traffic. It's nice. It reminded me of my days spent in the tree in the backyard as a child.
I was going to say it's quiet till the rope pops.
Oh, well, but it's a calculated risk. There were 3 fail-safes, so it was
All
okay.
right.
So as an elected official, that's how I was invited to do that. And there are other fun things that I've been able to do being invited as an elected official. And it's publicity stunts for a purpose, awareness or fundraising or what have you. And one of the other fun things I got to do a few years in a row was to take part in a demonstration over at the racetrack in Donaldsonville, where I got to drive a Dodge Charger on the track, racing against law enforcement in a Dodge Charger in the other lane. And I never did win, but they do that every day.
I attended those. They were fun.
They were fun. I did
Yeah.
get to go 3 rounds before they beat me, but
You
know,
just got to be quick on the pedal right when that light change.
Yes,
That's the
yes.
key right there.
I think I was, but I mean, these guys drive these cars
Yeah,
every day.
they
and
used to it.
Yes.
Let me ask you, when you did your food petition at Caldwell, were your parents the type that when you got on this said, now, Beryl, really? And, you know, or were they the type that said, oh, Beryl, speak your mind? Or was it somewhere in between?
It was somewhere in between, because if they had fussed me for doing something that I really felt was my conviction, then that would have been wrong. But if they encouraged me to do things that would cause me to end up in the principal's office, that would have been wrong. So I believe whenever they found out, I'm probably the one that went home and told them. I don't know that the office called back then over something so seemingly trivial today. Back then I was scared to death.
Trivial to them, but not to you.
Yes, well, as a
yeah.
little 6th grader, never been in trouble before, and I didn't know anything about petitions. I just thought it was a good idea. I just figured the police were coming to the school to get me, you know. Anyway, I think that when they heard the story, I believe they pretty much just smirked. I don't remember if they told me don't do that again, or if they said good try, or what.
Yeah.
They just kind of brushed it off.
They might have sighed and said, well, that was nothing.
Maybe so. And I was thinking back, as an adult, getting into the elected positions, I was trying to figure out, how did this ever even come about? And it occurred to me that my parents were active in the community when I was a really little girl. Back then, there was an organization in Schriever called the JCs, and my dad was actually the president for a time. Some of those earliest memories were of my dad in the evenings sitting at the kitchen table with a typewriter typing up agendas and things, and he had his wooden gavel, which we were told we shouldn't play with, but you know, it was really intriguing. It was a hammer made of wood, and you know, we even played with the typewriter. But I do remember that he led the JCs for a while, and one of the photos that stuck with me for years was when my dad and 3 other gentlemen who were all members of the JCs went to Mississippi to help out after Hurricane Camille. That stuck with me, that my dad would load up the trunk of the car till it could barely close with supplies and things to bring to the people who were recovering from Camille. So community service apparently has always been a part of our family. My sisters and I got to see this by example, and then later, as we were old enough to participate, they took us to the activities that they did, and we helped out. And it was just a part of life.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
You bring back so many memories with Camille, 1969, Nash Roberts or WWL Radio, where they'll give you a play-by-play and we're all huddled in the kitchen. But that was such a powerful storm. It was small. It was a lot like Beryl was that just came through. First of all, how did you feel having a storm named after you? People had their eye on Beryl for a long time.
That's actually the 3rd time that I remember having a storm named after me. I got phone calls and text messages, you know, people joking and saying funny things about it all, you know, for the past week. Was it the strongest ever in June? And the first ever to make a Category 5 in June? I'm thinking, oh great, well there are some similarities.
It was the first to make a 4, then it made a 5.
Yes, I said, well there's overachiever for you. But I was really pleased that it died down plenty before it made landfall here. We feel bad for the people down in the southern Gulf that had to deal with all that devastation.
Human nature, we always feel bad for the neighbors, but we're so doggone glad it wasn't us.
Well, yes, yes.
We had to go through Ida. We're still recovering.
Yes,
from Ida.
and we stand ready to help. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes the devastation is so far away, it's really not very practical. I mean, we can't all just jump on a plane and fly down there. But whenever it is our literal neighbors, Texas, right there, and even the northern part of Louisiana, I noticed that as the storm passed through, even though it was no longer a hurricane, the tornadoes that were spawned caused a lot of damage in North Louisiana. And so I have colleagues in the legislature
Right.
who are dealing with the aftermath today.
Trust me, they're going to upgrade it. It was gaining strength as it hit. And I've seen ones before. To me, that was not a one. You gave me a good question for you. Overachiever. You see yourself as an overachiever. You just said it a couple of lines ago.
That's what I've been labeled, and maybe it's really a little bit of ADD or ADHD. I do so many things at a time. Whenever I was in school, whenever we were in school, those kinds of labels weren't really heard of yet. They were just beginning to come up with these acronyms that are all household words or household acronyms now. But I do remember being terribly bored in school a lot of times, and finding ways to cope with that, because I was raised a good little Catholic girl, so I definitely was not going to interrupt the class, but I had to sit there and figure out how to keep myself alert and entertained whenever classroom assignments were boring or whenever I finished them really quickly. Right now, even today, whenever I have so many different projects that I'm working on, the best way to get me to finish a project is to put a deadline on it. Without a deadline, I may not finish. And also, the only way I ever get much done is to multitask. So I usually read like 5 books at a time, or I work on 3 projects at a time. And that way, whenever I get to a point on this current project where I'm stumped and I have to figure out something, or if I get bored, I'm at the mundane part of it, I can bounce. I just go off and do this other project for a little while. And then when that one gets to a point where I need a break, I can come back and do this one. So by doing multiple things at once, I think that's where in school they started to label me overachiever. I would do more than what was expected.
Just say overachiever, but energetic.
Very energetic. My mom used to put breakfast on the table and just leave it there, and I would come and eat a few bites in the summertime. I'd run outside, do some cartwheels, come back and eat a few more bites. She said it was like feeding a bird. You just put the food out, and I would come when I was hungry. And it was because I didn't want to sit still much.
Right.
So like my older sister and my next door neighbor, who was around her age, they would often play board games like Life or Monopoly. You ever played those?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They can take hours.
Right.
Well, I didn't have that kind of time, so I would never sit still long enough to play the whole game.
Right.
But everybody's got their gifts. I would let them know that as soon as they were finished, they should not pick up the game. They needed to call me, because I was going to take all of the little pieces and sort them into the little holders.
Yeah.
I liked to organize all the
So
game
you're
pieces and the money.
meticulous.
Yes, or maybe I just like to sort. That fascinates me. I don't know.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm. This one-on-one program has been brought to you by the law offices of Waits and Downer.